So this is my first live chat. I have no idea what I'm doing really, but that applies to my whole life actually, not just tonight, so should be fun. I have a drink anyway, so I hope somebody's joining me and it's not just me drinking alone in public. So before we start, I'll just give you a quick tour of my desk. Not that there's anything interesting, but this is where I work. This used to be my son's bedroom before he moved out, and when he moved out I stuck a desk in it. So these are the books that I use every day pretty much. This word finder is brilliant. I have the Penguin book of baby names because I find it really hard to think of character names. So I have a flick through the baby book when I'm starting a new book and pick out some people. What else do I have? I always liked Yankee candles when I write a first draft. I don't know why, it's turned into a bit of a ritual. Hi Lauren, hi Katie. I have a box of tissues for when my structural edits come because I cry a lot. My book clock. This is my Mac, which is a ridiculous size, and this is what happens when you take a teenage boy shopping to get a new computer. I really need to actually get the smaller size because it's a bit big for me. This is the map. I have all my foreign sales on for the sister and the gift, so that's quite cool to look at every day. I have some nice book reviews here that I've printed out. Kind of when you're here and you're stuck and you're feeling a little bit isolated, they're lovely to look back on. What else do I have? The Ernest Hemingway, The First Draft of Anything is Shit. I think every writer should have that on their desk. And The Worst Enemy to Creativity is Self-Doubt. That's another good one. I have the foreign editions for the sister are starting to trickle through now. And I have my frame covers on the wall. And my sister bought me this for Christmas, and what I did with it, although I was really grateful, was I hid it behind my screen so I can't actually see it because I still feel a little bit uncomfortable with the whole best-selling author tag. Yeah, that's a gift box my sister gave me that was full of chocolates. Hi Sue, hi Lee and Hilary. Right, I'm going to get started on your questions now, so please forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm not very good. So the first one is Nikki Procopio. I don't know if that's right. It's probably not right in the slightest. He says, the blurb of The Surrogate sounds great. How did you have the inspiration to write a book about surrogacy? What happened was I was at a hospital for an appointment and I was flicking through one of the women's magazines and there was a story there about surrogacy, and it had the surrogate and the parents and the baby and everything had gone really well, but I started to think, you know, what if it hadn't gone well? You put such a lot of trust in a surrogate. You know, you're trusting them to eat properly and look after the baby as you would. And, you know, when I was pregnant, I was a little bit anal about everything I did. I had to exercise, I had to really take care of myself. And I thought, imagine if you put your trust in somebody else to bring up your baby like that. And imagine if that trust was misplaced. And then I started thinking, and the characters came to mind, and that was it really. I couldn't stop thinking about them, so I knew it was a book I really wanted to write. Hey, Lauren says, I like the idea of using the baby names book. Yeah, it's my son, he names a lot of the characters in my book, but when he's at school, it's really handy to have a fallback. Emma, yeah, that was your review of The Sister. I have your review of The Gift here as well, and I read them literally every day. Hi, John, I'm good, thank you. I can't wait either, Wendy. Really excited about The Surrogate. I think it's been out to beta readers and they've all kind of said it's the best book I've written so far, so very excited about that. So Lee Harris asks, is your inspiration always from the same source, and if not, where do you find it? I think with inspiration what I do is I pick a subject that I'm interested in. With The Gift it was cellular memory. I heard about cellular memory years before, about the way that organs can retain memory, so when they're transplanted, you know, the recipient can then take on traits and personality of the donor, and I found that really fascinating. And again, with surrogacy, it was a subject I was interested in, so I tend to find the subject first and then try to work around that. Hi, Kim Nash is here. Kim is our publicist from Bookature. She does a wonderful job. Hi, Kim. Lee also asks, how much of yourself is in your books, and is that a conscious decision? I think it's inevitable when you start to write that you do put a little bit of yourself in. I think with Grace, with the sister, she has some of my personality traits. She likes chocolate and wine quite a lot. And I think little things like that. I made her listen to vinyl records, and I know when it went through the edit, my editor came back and said, do you really mean vinyl records, or do you want to stream something and be a bit more modern? But I was like, no, I want to keep it as it is. But I think emotionally, Grace isn't really anything like me. But in The Gift, I think, oh, Andrew, The Gift will take some beating, thank you. In The Gift, Jenna is very much, I did base her partly on myself because I've been through some health stuff and had that big change in health circumstances. And I know what it feels really to feel a little bit separate to people and a bit isolated and a bit, you know, my life will never be the same and I have to make these big adjustments. So a lot of Jenna's emotions did come from me, yeah, very much so. Lee also asks, any ideas for your 4th bestseller? Well, thanks for the vote of confidence there. Yeah, I started writing my 4th book last year. It was going to be the 3rd book, but I got so excited by the idea of surrogacy and so carried away with it, I kind of put the 4th book on hold. So I think, I won't say too much because I need to have a quick chat with my editor and make sure she's still happy for me to go ahead with it, but I do think I know what the 4th book will be about. So Kathy Johnson, why isn't the surrogate on NetGalley? It will be. It's still, you know, being proofread. It's still going through the process, but yeah, in a few weeks it will be. Emma, would you consider writing a series? The sister was always supposed to be a little bit of an ongoing thing, but my editor thought with a psychological thriller it was better to be standalone unless there's police procedures in it, and I have really got no interest in writing police procedures, so I think at the moment I wouldn't write a series, but I wouldn't rule it out in the future. I'm quite interested in looking at writing young adult as well in the future, so that I think that would be a good idea for a series. John, how can I build my interest in reading books? Ooh, maybe start with short stories if you find it hard to focus or you're not really sure what genre you kind of like to start with. Maybe start with something, you know, get a book of short stories of different genres and just see what you enjoy really, because you can't force reading. You've got to really want to do it and, and really feel passionately about it. Emma, yeah, bring back Grace. I'm trying. I'd really like to. Yeah, one day. So Samantha Curtis has sent a question and she says, sorry to not be able to make this. I'm a debut novelist and have heaps of questions. For now, I will ask one thing which hopefully will be useful to the group. How did your writing confidence blossom? She says, I know when I started out I felt like a fraud. Some of my friends have English lit degrees. When did you think to yourself, this is it, it's going to happen, I can feel it? That's a really, really good question. When I started out, I read so many blogs from writers and devoured their websites, and yeah, there is a lot of people out there with English lit degrees that have done all these courses that are, well, I had to write 3 books before I was published, and I found it really daunting, thinking I can't afford to do a degree, I don't have the time. And I didn't want to write 3 books before I was published either, so I was quite demoralised and I thought it won't happen for me. And I wrote The Sister purely for fun. It was for a hobby, and I didn't really think at that stage about getting published. It was because I'd had an accident and I found myself in a wheelchair and I couldn't do the things I wanted to do, and I was quite depressed and quite bored and I needed an outlet really, so I started to write. And it wasn't till I'd written a first draft and we went on holiday, and I think having that break from the manuscript, when I came back and read it, I thought, wow, I've written this. And the first half I was really gripped by, and I loved the characters and I liked my writing. And it got to the second half and I was really, really bored. Anybody that's read The Sister will know there's a couple of characters in it called Dan and Anna, and in the original version they left the book halfway through. And when they were gone, I felt quite bored, and I thought, the fact that I can view this book constructively, and I think the first half is good and the second half isn't, but I know why, excuse me, and I know how to fix it, I kind of thought, yeah, I think I can do this, definitely do this. And I sat down with my husband, and at the time we were both working full-time for a business. We had our own business, and I said to him, I've written a book. And he said, oh, good. And I said, I think it's good. And he said, oh, I'm sure it's wonderful, because he's my husband and he thinks everything is wonderful. And I said, no, actually, I think it's publishable. And what I would like to do is to take 6 months where I work part-time and to try to get it finished and off to agents and see where we stand after that. So it was a case of going through our finances, realising we'd be living on beans, and kind of sitting down with the children saying, I really want to do this, but it will mean no holidays, no days out, no takeaways, a leaner Christmas. You know, what does everyone think? And they were all behind me. So I did that for 6 months. And I sent it off. I did my first submission. I only did one submission because I'd stalked this agent for a long time, and I really wanted her to be my agent. And I wrote my letter and sent off my first 3 chapters just before Christmas, which is really bad. Anybody's thinking about submitting, don't do it before Christmas. It's a really bad time. And I sent it off and came downstairs and made a cup of tea and checked my emails to see if I'd got an auto reply, and she'd replied and said, your letter's really gripped me. I'm going to start reading tonight. And I was really surprised, because on my letter I didn't have an awful lot to put on it. I did a 1-sentence pitch and a little bit about the book, but I had no experience, no courses, anything to put on it. And the next day she came back and said, absolutely loved it, my assistant loves it, send me the rest. So I did. And at the end of reading she rang me up, and I thought, oh, this has all been so easy. And she said no, but the fact that she did request it and she did love it, and we had a long chat about my writing and my style, so I kind of knew from that moment that it would be published eventually. So Mookie says, the sister made a reader of me, never been much of one before. Oh, thank you, that's really nice. It's lovely that people have read it and enjoyed it. So Andrew says, would you agree it's more important for the author to have empathy with their main character like you did in The Gift? I'm quite an emotional person, and I'm an emotional reader and writer, and so I have to feel that connection to the character when I write. And I have to be able to feel what they're feeling at any given time, and I think that's whatever I'm writing. But it did obviously help with The Gift that I'd kind of been through a similar experience to Jenna, so I could really put myself in her shoes. But yeah, I think if I can't connect with my characters properly, I can't expect my readers to. So yeah, I do really have to feel for them. Kathy, love your accent. Thank you. I didn't know I had one. I suppose everybody does. Thank you. John James, your favourite book? My favourite book is Little Women. It was the first book I'd really read. Kind of an adult book. Before then it had all been Enid Blyton, and I was quite young when I read Little Women, and it just made me feel really powerful. I just wanted to be Jo March, and I was thinking, if words can make somebody feel like that and actually want to make a change in themselves, it's kind of what I want to do. I want to write. So, Emma Welton, which is the favourite of your books? Which are you most proud of? Oh, you'll be asking me to pick a favourite child. I think The Sister will always have a special place in my heart. I love Grace and Charlie. I owe them so much. I mean, I'm kind of where I am today because of them. But I love the characters in that book. I spent so much time writing it and refining it, and it will always be very special to me. But, however, I do think The Surrogate is the best book I've ever written in terms of pace and plot and writing. So I think although The Sister will always be very dear to me, I think The Surrogate is probably the winner at the moment. So Jess says, I currently use Amazon to self-publish my books. Do you have any tips for sending your work to publishers? There's a book on, I can't remember who wrote it. I think Libby Hawkins, that rings a bell. She's written a book you can get on Kindle it's something called How to Pitch to Agents, or How to Pitch Your Work, or something like that. And I structured my letter exactly as she said. It's a really good book, and literally every submission I made, a comment came back about my letter and about my elevator pitch. So I think it's really important to structure them well and to not waffle on and to also listen to the guidelines, because every publisher wants something different. Some people want a 300-word synopsis, some people want a page. You've got to refine it to who you're submitting for, and if you don't take any notice of the guidelines and you kind of just do a generic thing to every publisher, that they're not going to take you seriously as a writer. So read the guidelines properly, get your letter, and good luck. Okay, so Lauren says young adult is an awesome genre to write in. Yeah, I read a lot with my 11-year-old son. He likes really, really pacey, adventurous books, so it's a genre I'm reading more and more of, and they're really sophisticated stories and characters. It's been a real eye-opener, so yeah, definitely something I'm interested in. Shelley says, love Little Women. Yeah, me too. What current book have you read that has spoken to you? The last book I read, I finished last Sunday, and it's a debut. It will be out in November, and it's by Fiona Mitchell, and it's called The Maid's Room. And I haven't felt that way about a book for ages, and a book just gets into your heart, and you can't stop thinking about it, and you can't stop thinking about the characters. And I read it outside, and my husband came outside when I'd finished, and I was crying, and he's like, oh my God, what's wrong? And I was like, I've finished this book, and I don't know how I'm going to cope without these sisters that were the characters in the book. It was a phenomenal read. So yeah, that's the last book. And normally I would start another book when I finished, but it was so good, I kind of feel I owe it a period of mourning before I pick anything else up. So Becky Bridges, where is your favourite place to sit and write? Well, I write pretty much in what was my son's bedroom. We're quite a busy house. We've got 3 boys and a cat and a dog, and my husband works from home, and the house is very rarely empty, so to grab a piece of quiet is really nice, so I tend to tuck myself away. I always have this dream about writing outside in the sun and stuff, but with the glare on the screen I just can't do it, but I do like being outside. If I'm kind of making notes on something with a notepad, I will head towards some water. We have some lakes around here. Just sit and, take some chocolate and write outside. Jess says, thanks for your advice. How do you find an agent? What drew you to your current agent? When I was deciding who to submit to, I read books, I read lots of books, found out which ones I liked, either looked on the author website or messaged the author or got in touch through Twitter or something, said, who is your agent, like what you're doing, like the way you're publishing, are you happy with them? And once I'd found that out, I stalked them for a while on Twitter just to see, because you have to have quite a personal relationship with your agent, so it's quite important that you get on. So yeah, I kind of found out what they were like on social media, watched them for a while, and then decided from there whether to submit to them. I think it's something to take seriously, because they've got your career in their hands, really, so you want somebody that is doing good stuff, somebody that you think you can relate to and get on with. My agent's lovely. I can ring him up at any time. He's very calming. Yeah, I think you need that. So yeah, ask other authors that you like, that are doing well, who their agent is, and take it from there. So I'm going to go back to some more questions that were left. So Michelle Harris says, which was your favourite book to write, and would you consider a sequel? Yeah, I think The Sister, I've said that, yeah, I would love to do a sequel one day. Eden Thompson, what would your advice to first-time writers be? I think when we start to write, speaking from my own experience, it can feel really indulgent. You can kind of feel, you should be doing something else. You should be doing the ironing, you should be doing the washing. It can feel quite selfish in a way. And I think to get over that and to carve out some regular time each day and to guard that time and to know what you're doing is really valuable, because whether you're published or not, writing's great for, mental health, it's great for your emotional well-being, and just to find that time and do it every day. I wrote The Sister before I kind of cut down on my work hours. Between 7 and 7:30 every day when my son had independent reading, that would be when I would sit down and write. And I wrote virtually the whole book kind of in that half an hour a day. So although your time may not seem much, little by little, you build it up page by page. Eventually you have a book. Andrew Davis, which classic book do you wish you'd written excluding Little Women? Ooh, I don't know. There's so many. I do like the classics. trying to reread a lot of them at the moment. I started rereading Dickens a while ago, but I found it really hard going, so I actually abandoned it. I remember reading Dickens when I was young and quite enjoying it, but I think my tastes have changed a bit. I like Jane Eyre. I'll come back to that. I'll have a think. Okay. Hi Cheryl, don't worry that you're late. Right, Mookie, you've sent over a few questions. Right, I've mentioned before that I never enjoyed first-person novels before I read The Sister. What was it that made you choose this style of storytelling? Is it something that comes more naturally to you? Okay. I much enjoy first-person reading and writing. If I'm in Waterstones flicking through a book, I do tend to buy the first-person ones. I like that feeling that you're with a character. The present tense I wrote in, when I told a few writers when I was starting to write, I'm going to write a book in present tense, and they all said, you're making a huge mistake. People don't like it, agents don't like it, publishers don't like it. So I took their advice and I wrote the whole book in past tense. And when I read it back, I kind of thought, this isn't what I wanted it to be. And I think the best advice I was ever given was write the book you want to read. So one day my husband said he'd booked us a lunch, and I said, oh, I'm just going to change the present chapters to present tense and then we'll go out. Because I think when you start writing, you don't really know what you're doing. And I sat down to try and change the tense, and it took me about 3 weeks to restructure all the sentences and put it into present tense. But I like that immediacy, particularly in thrillers. So I think The Gift was all present tense, and The Surrogate is a mixture again of past and present. So Mookie also asks, twist endings have become hugely popular in recent years. When it comes to writing thriller novels, do you feel pressured to deliver these, or is it something you are naturally passionate about? Yeah, I think twists are something that are huge in books at the moment, and they're something readers like. I think readers like the big twists that they haven't seen coming, but they also like twists to be credible, and it's quite hard to get something that's really big and unexpected and credible sometimes. With The Gift, I didn't know what the twist would be all the way through, because I started writing The Gift before I got a book deal, and I was writing it as a love story. So once I got the book deal and realised I had to write thrillers, I kind of had to go back and try to make it into a thriller. And it wasn't until I got to the end where I kind of thought, oh, that's the twist. And that happened quite naturally. And with The Surrogate, I'd kind of, in my mind, I thought I knew the ending before I started writing. So I thought it's not going to have a big twist. It's just going to have a series of little twists all the way through. And then I got to the end and there was this massive twist that just appeared out of nowhere. So yeah, I think they do come quite naturally when you get to that stage in the book. So Mookie also asks, where does your writing process start in regard to plot and characters? Do you have a rough idea from the beginning and then see where it takes you, or do you have a plan? I would love to be able to plan. I've bought so many books about how to plot a novel and not had time to read them. I start with a subject that I'm interested in. Normally a character will spring to mind, and then I have to know what that character wants and what's stopping them get that. And once I know those things, I start to write. I don't make any plan, but I have a pen and paper next to me, and if things occur to me as I'm going, I just bullet point them. And what I tend to do is I write in a program called Scrivener, so you can write and segregate your chapters and string them all together at the end. So if I'm writing something and I think, oh, there could be this dramatic scene, you know, in the future, I will tend to then write that dramatic scene to keep me interested in. And at the end, I would try to string all these scenes together into a book. So yeah, no plan, just write when it occurs to me, not in order, and put it all together at the end. I don't know if I'd recommend that or not, but it works for me. So Nikki Diamond says, what do you find most inspiring when you're writing? I think readers email me a lot, particularly with things, you know, if they've had experiences that relate to one of the books. I've heard some fascinating stories about cellular memory and people that have had the gift. And with The Sister, because it's a book predominantly about working through grief and how we work our way through it and come out stronger at the end, and how it changes us. I've heard some really touching emails, and I think they're the ones that inspire me to keep going, you know, the readers that take the time to get in touch and share a bit of their experience as well. So just scrolling down, just seeing what I've missed. Lauren says, I don't really get on with books written in the third person, it's harder to get in with it. Yeah, there are some very good books written in third person, but I think we all have different tastes, don't we? Kim Nash, do you enjoy the PR side of the writing business? I don't have to do a lot because you do it all, Kim. So, yeah, I love getting out and meeting readers. I think that's a real pleasure. I think when you're spending a lot of time in your room, it's quite isolating, so it's nice to get out. Blogging I love because I've always blogged. As for marketing, I wouldn't have a clue, which is why we're so lucky to have Kim. Jenny says, I'm really considering getting Scrivener. It's phenomenal, Jenny. I don't know how people write a book without it. I think it would be really, really hard. As well as having all your chapters down the side, you can give them little names and you can drag and drop them, so you can change the order of them at any time. And if I'm writing a scene and I kind of think, oh, there needs to be a man in a red coat earlier on, you just click on the earlier chapter and straight in it, stick in a red coat, go back to where you were. You can trial Scrivener free on their website. I think you get 30 uses free, and it's not 30 consecutive days, it's like 30 times every time you use it, and then you can choose whether to buy it after that, so it's well worth it. Becky Bridges, I love how accurately you write about things such as cellular memory and veterinary nursing. I love research. I researched a lot cellular memory for the gift, and I had a brilliant veterinary nurse helping me, so she was brilliant. So Mookie says Scrivener's fantastic. Yeah. So back to Mookie's questions. If you were to release a single book in a completely different genre just for fun, what would it be and why? And if you could collaborate with any author, who would it be? I'm going to answer both of those together and say my son, who's 11, is a phenomenal writer. He's so good with plot. His vocabulary is amazing. He's writing a book, and we're talking about plot ideas together. So I'm hoping that we will write a young adult book together at some stage. So how do you deal with legitimate negative criticism? Yeah, I think criticism, if it's constructive, definitely has a part. I'm a really new writer, actually. I'm still finding my feet, so I find reviews massively helpful. And, you know, you get the 1 and 2 star reviews with just one word, and they help nobody. But, you know, you can get 3 and 4 star reviews that have, you know, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't like. And I've definitely learned from reader feedback. So, yeah, it's how we improve, really. I don't do any courses. I just, you know, write what I feel, and learning what has worked for people and what hasn't worked for people has been massively helpful. So who or what is your biggest driving force when it comes to writing? I think I just have a really strong work ethic. I think I like to be busy. I come from a family where most of us are self-employed. I have 3 boys. I want them to have the same work ethic I do. So I think I drive myself forward naturally because I like to be busy. So, okay. So I've got Wendy's questions now, and thanks to Wendy for organising tonight. It's been brilliant. So, as a writer myself, what advice would you give in preparation to becoming a published writer? Ooh, I don't think anything can prepare you. Get some wine in, that's a good tip. I think learning some time management, because it's so busy. I thought being a writer meant writing, and it's so much more than that. It's, you know, you have to market yourself to a degree. You have to be editing the book before while writing a new book. You have stuff to do. At the moment, I've just done a blog tour for my Italian publishers, so I've had to answer interview questions for that. I've got my Dutch publishers are bringing out an anthology of their authors. I've got a short story to write for that. You know, it's always very, very busy. So I think if you can learn some time management and learn to structure your writing time before you're published, that will stand you in really good stead. So how did I secure a publishing deal with a wonderful bookateur? Okay, I think that was kind of fate, really. I'd been to a dinner with Kerry Fisher, who's one of the bookateur authors. I'd got my full manuscript out with 8 agents at that time, And Kerry said to me, why don't you submit to Bookouture? You can go to them directly. And I kind of said, well, no, it's with agents. I'll let it run its course and see what happens. And she says, no, I'm so happy with them. I've just joined. You must. Let's submit your manuscript now. So I did. And then I got an email from a lady called Kirsty Greenwood, who's the editor for Novelicious. And she said, have you heard of Bookouture? I've just joined them. Follow your blog and see, love your flash fiction. See, you've just completed your novel. Can I have it? I'd love you to be my first acquisition. So I said, oh, funnily enough, I'm with Kerry Fisher and we've just sent it over. So it was just meant to be, really. It was very, very lucky, and they've just been phenomenal. It's just, yeah, really is a dream come true. So Wendy asks, each of your 3 novels have been unique. What gives you the inspiration? It's always the subject matter. I never sit down and think, oh, I need to think of a plot or need to think of a character. It's very much subject driven. Once I've got something I'm interested in, because you spend a lot of time with a book, you spend a lot of time writing it and thinking about it, and you've got to have some heart there, something that really draws you back to it every day, otherwise you're just going to get bored. So how do you market your work? What avenues have you found the best for your genre? I don't market too much. Kim Nash, the publicist for Bookouture, is phenomenal, and she arranges pretty much everything. She's really good, really hardworking, and I get sent things like interviews, and she arranges things for us, or radio interviews, and I go off and do my bit where I can. But yeah, just learning as I go, really. So Becky Bridges asks, as you know how difficult it is to get published, do you do anything to support new writers? Absolutely, yeah. I'm very passionate about supporting new writers. I answer every email that's sent to me. Any advice I can give, I can give. If I can't give the advice, I will try to find somebody that can help that person in their genre. I'm also part of a project called the Women's Mentoring Project, where it's a group of writers and editors and agents that all give their time for free mentoring new writers. You can apply on the website, lots of different people offering time in lots of different genres. So that's something. I'm all for giving back, and people helped me when I started on this journey, so I'm all for giving back to people where I can. Okay, hello Saskia. Tim says, you also write flash fiction. Do you find this skill to create a whole story in so few words useful to creating ideas for the plots of your novels? Yeah, actually, I take part in a challenge on WordPress every week called Friday Fictioneers, and a photo prompt is posted, and you have to write a story in 100 words, and there's quite a lot of people that take part. It's really fun to do, and that's really where I learned to write. Before I started writing my novel, I started doing this Friday Fictioneers thing every week, and it really refines your writing. It really tightens it, because you only have 100 words, so you can't afford to waffle or go off on a tangent. You've got to have a beginning, a middle and an end, and it's one of the best writing things I do, and I still do it every week now because I learn each time I do it. It's great. So I blog over at louisejensen.co.uk, so you can have a look there and follow the link to the Friday Fictioneers thing if you write and you want to join in. It's good fun. Hi Saskia from the Netherlands, hello. Andrew Davis asks, when I started reading Dead Simple by Peter James, I realised I could write. Which book convinced you that you could write? Ooh. Oh, and he has very impressive sales figures. Which book convinced me I could write? I'm not sure whether reading a book convinced me I could write. Reading Enid Blyton, I'm not very sophisticated. It really gave me an interest in mysteries and solving that mystery and unravelling it, and also the bond between relationships and friendships and how that worked. So I think they were the books that made me want to write. I don't know whether I actually knew I could write. So Wendy, I love Bookouture books. Me too, actually. And when I joined Bookouture, I remember saying to all the authors, I'm going to read every single one of your books. I didn't realise quite how many there were, and I'm kind of 6 months behind, but there are some amazing books. Bookouture would be my dream publisher. They're taking submissions. Okay, Jenny Mackenzie asks, did you have to work quicker on your second and third novels due to deadlines, and did you feel more pressured working like that? And were you worried about rushing into a storyline, or did you have lots of ideas for subsequent novels already? I'm not a writer with a notebook full of ideas. I tend to be working on an idea, and then when I've wrapped that up, I get another idea. So I'm not kind of planning books ahead. Yeah, in all honesty, I did have to work quickly on The Gift. I'd started it actually before I got my book deal. It was called Secondhand Secrets at the time, was its working title, and it was a story about Jenna, who had had a heart transplant, and she met the boyfriend of the donor without knowing, and they fell in love, and it was this epic story. But then obviously I got the book deal and it had to become a psychological thriller. I did feel very pressured working on that, because I think when you're first thrown into publishing, you don't really understand the process of you're editing your first book and it's coming backwards and forwards all the time between the different copy edits, structural edits, proofreading, checking through the files while you're working on your second book, and it was a lot of pressure, and it took me quite a while to find my feet. So I wasn't worried into rushing into that storyline because I'd already had a really good start on it. And also The Gift took a phenomenal amount of research, and I'd already spent about 3 months researching that before. So yeah, but definitely found it stressful and high pressured. The Surrogate, on the other hand, I think has just been a complete joy to write. I've really found my feet now, I think, and I've loved writing it. It's just the characters, I'm going to really miss them. Really miss them. So Tim says, how do you feel as we approach publication day for The Surrogate? As it's your third book, has the excitement worn off now? No, I think releasing a debut was absolutely terrifying. I didn't know if anybody would read it, or if anybody would like it. And although I did enjoy the process, I found it really, really, really frightening. And The Gift was just so stressful. It was kind of releasing a second book when your first book has been so successful. I found a lot of pressure. So The Surrogate is kind of the first book that I'm so genuinely excited about releasing. I can't wait for people to read this one. I love the story. I don't know whether writers should play it cool, really. I mean, yeah, it's okay. Go buy it if you want to. But no, I'm really, really excited about The Surrogate coming out. So Kim said, if any of your books were made into a TV or film series, who would you want to be the main actor or actress? Ooh. I would love The Gift actually to be made into a film or TV series, because I think it's quite original, and I think it would be good. I think it would be good as a film. There's been quite a lot of dramatic rights interest in The Gift, but as yet it's not been optioned. The Surrogate, I was watching something the other day with Emma Watson, and I thought she would be amazing as Kat, the main character in The Surrogate, and perhaps with Nicholas Hoult as her husband. So yeah, I think they'd both be really good in it. So just see what I've missed on here. Okay, so Cassandra Jones said, any books you would recommend to a book group, including yours? My book group are always looking for recommendations. I love book groups. I belong to two myself. My books always have book club questions in the back, because I like that, the idea of a little discussion going on. I have been to some book clubs that have discussed my books. The Sister is there's quite a lot to discuss. I'm not going to go into the twists, but there's quite a lot of twists in The Sister, so that's had some really good discussions. But The Gift has been phenomenal for book groups, I think, because the subject matter of cellular memory has sparked some really interesting debates about whether it's, could it be true? Could people really have organ transplants and retain some memories of the donor? There's lots of examples in The Gift of where this has happened, and they're all true. They're all credited at the back. Lots of people have experienced this. And also it's sparked a lot of debates about the organ donor register. People that have not thought before about whether to be on it or not broach the subject with their families have actually sat down with their families and talked about organ donation. So really pleased that's happened. So I think The Gift is a great story for book clubs. My book club, the last book we read was The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon, and that was quite a sweet story. I think next week we're reading something about genetics, because we read non-fiction too, so yeah, like book clubs. How do you come up with the titles for your books? I don't, Cassandra. Bookouture do that for me. And when I first got my contract, the sister was called Buried Memories, and they said, oh no, we're not going to call it that. And I was a bit upset because I thought, oh, you know, I quite like my title. But then I understood that they're so good at marketing, they're good at what they do, and you have a publisher really because they are experts of their side of the thing, whereas I just have to write the stories. And the cover as well, who designs the covers? Well, Bookouture brief the cover, and then my covers, they use different freelancers. And I have Henry Stedman, he's called, and he has done covers for Dan Brown and Stephen King, and I think he's brilliant. I feel really lucky to have him. So it's always really exciting now to see what titles Bookouture will come up with and see the covers. It's kind of one of the highlights for me. So I think they're very good at it. I love all their covers. So just scrolling down again. Ooh. Kim Nash, would love to have your book club at Mims if I fancy coffee and cake. Always fancy coffee and cake, Kim, yes. Wendy, we have book club questions. I love book club questions, absolutely, and that's my job for next week, is going to be writing the ones for the surrogate, so I'm really excited about that. So Karen Appleby asks, have you ever based any of your characters on people you know? Not really, no. I think characters tend to take on a life of their own. You can't mould them into being something that they're not. So I think they're very much their own people. I take little traits sometimes. There's a lady in the surrogate called Lisa, and when she was at school for her English homework, she used to copy out song lyrics for poetry rather than doing her homework, and that was something a friend of mine used to do at school. So I sent her the paragraph the other day and said, do you recognise this? And she's like, oh no, you based the character on me. And I said, no, but just that bit. So yeah, I pull little bits out of life sometimes, but I don't base characters on people. And Karen also asks, if you want to find a character in your book to change something about them, how do you search for them? In Word and in Scrivener, in your editing menu, there is a thing called Find, and you just put the name in there and it will come up with all the time it's mentioned. So in The Gift, Jenna had a best friend called Libby. I thought she'd be quite important throughout the book. She was a best friend, but when I got to the end, because there's so many twists in The Gift and it's quite complex, it was quite a long book, so I read it back and I kind of thought, actually, Libby is not earning her place in this book, so we'll just get rid of her. So I used that search facility then and just pulled her out. So, Veronica Collins, what genre do you enjoy reading when you're not writing yourself? I love commercial fiction. I love women's fiction. I said earlier that, you know, I've just read this book called The Maid's Room that was just so emotional. I just loved it. I love books that really make me kind of cry. I think, yeah, I very much love commercial stories. Wendy says, I love your covers and titles. Thank you. Yeah, me too. I was really, really excited when I saw The Surrogate. And I'm glad it kind of fits in with the other two. I think they all look really nice together. So just a few more questions that were on the event page. Michael Wynne, could you tell me, when starting your next novel, do you simply have one idea and write, or do you have several, all of which you maybe begin until you know which one is your strongest? Yeah, with my third book, I wrote 3 chapters, sent it over to my publishers and said, this is what I'm doing, and it was quite complex. And while I was sitting trying to think about how to develop it, I read this story on surrogacy, so I wrote 3 chapters of that, and decided surrogacy would probably be the simplest one to write at that time, so that's what I went with. So I've still got the start of the other one, but I don't have any kind of abandoned novels anywhere yet. There's still time for that. So when editing your books, how ruthless are you? Has there ever been a time when you know a passage should come out but you like it so much you've left it in? I'm quite ruthless when I edit. I do get rid of quite a lot. With The Sister, it was a love story, and when I read it back, I think I said earlier, I was a bit bored by the second half, so I cut 40,000 words and did those again. And The Gift had to be completely restructured to fit into the genre. So there have been times when, yeah, my editor Lydia, she's lovely, She's on maternity leave actually now at the moment, but there's a couple of things with the gift she was pulling out going, these are a bit emotional, and I was putting them back saying, but I really like them. So yeah, there are things that I've kept in that perhaps shouldn't have gone, but I think when you're writing, sometimes you write a line and you think, I'm never going to write anything this good again, I love it, but you will, you know, you always come up with something better. So Michael also says, for the bits you reject, do you keep a Drabble folder? And if you do, have you ever used any of the excerpts in subsequent works? I haven't, no. Purely because I'm not that technical. I don't know how to arrange my computer and folders and stuff. So when I delete stuff, it does tend to go and never see the light of day again. I think also when I've been editing The Surrogate, there was a subplot that my editor wanted me to pull out. And I was trying to salvage what was left and change that and make it kind of fit. And it can be harder sometimes to try and shoehorn older words into something new. And in the end, sometimes it's just easier to just start again completely. And you'll always find new words and nice phrases and things. You know, you don't run out. So last couple of questions on the event page is Lee says, do you believe you will always write within the same genre? I don't know. I would love to write a commercial book. Quite interested in young adult. I do love thrillers. I love the unexpectedness of them, and they keep me interested. I have quite a short attention span, so that not knowing what's going to happen next. And I'm lucky enough that I can kind of blend my genres to a degree. So although my books are marketed as psychological thrillers, they do have that big emotional impact in them as well. So I kind of got the best of both worlds at the moment. But yeah, I'm a new writer. I think I will definitely experiment at some stage. And Lee says, are you now accustomed to writing books, or do you foresee a book of short stories in the future? I think I love the flash fiction that was mentioned earlier. They're just 100-word stories and they're great to write. I have lots of those, and I've been meaning to self-publish a couple of volumes for about a year now and not have the time to do it, so kind of need to pull together a cover and sort that out. Love writing novels, short stories. I wrote one for an anthology called Dark Minds by Bloodhound Books. That was a charity anthology, and that was that's the only short story I've ever written. And it is quite different to write a short story, quite hard, I found. I need to write one at the moment for my Dutch publishers, and they want 5,000 words, and it's kind of like, oh, how am I going to do that? I don't know. So I don't foresee short stories as such, maybe some flash fiction. Okay, I think that's all the questions off the event page. I think so, Wendy. Did you just check nothing new has come up? Oh yeah, there is. So Billy McLaughlin, do you go back and read your previous back to get the tone of your characters right? Is that the previous day's work, I think, perhaps? Yeah, I do. I think you have to really write your way into knowing the characters when you're writing a book. So when I first start writing, I know that I'll probably lose what I'm writing initially. And when I feel I don't know the characters enough, there was a couple of characters in the gift that I thought I don't really know them well enough to have them in my book. So I kind of opened a new file and I wrote a couple of like short scenes with them in a cafe and just listened to how they interacted and what they were observing and kind of got to know them that way, and then went back to the book and felt I knew them a lot better and was able to write. So yeah, you have to get the tone right, you have to really know your characters. So Andrew, you'll always sell because your writing is genuine quality. Oh, thanks so much. And Hetty's just joined. Hello, Hetty. So is there any other questions? I'm just going to make sure I haven't missed any. Just talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Oh, Kim, can't wait to get my hands on The Surrogate and help you share it with the world. Oh, that's lovely, thank you. I can't wait for you to read it, actually. I'm really excited. Lee is currently reading The Gift. Good, I hope you enjoy it. Mookie, thank you for reigniting my passion for reading. That's really nice. Hilary, when we were younger, we were very into John Saul books. Yes, we were. Hilary's a friend of mine. As a mum, could you cover this topic? I think I wouldn't want to write about anything I wouldn't be happy with my children reading. I think I'd have to feel comfortable. I don't think I could write horror or anything horrible happening to children or anything like that. I have to sleep at night, really. I think probably that sort of thing would be too scary for me nowadays. Jess said, what drew you to your current agent? We just got on really well when we met. I met with a few agents, and I think I said earlier a bit about agents that you have to have that relationship with them, and he kind of understood where I was coming from and what I wanted, and he wasn't pushy, which is really important. And yeah, we just clicked, really. I think you need that. Okay, I think that's everything. So thank you everybody for coming, and thanks for having me. And I think genuinely this has been one of the nicest things about being published. Is when I was growing up, I used to love to read all the time, and I used to get really, really emotionally invested in the characters and really involved in the stories, and and none of my family read at all. And as I got older, I kind of met people that did read, and they would buy a book and read it and discard it and then read something else, and not talk about them. And I always thought I was a little bit odd for becoming so emotionally passionate about these characters that I would read about, and so involved in the stories that, sometimes, like I was saying, when I finish The Maid's Room, I have to have a few days before I can start reading anything else. So to actually, when I was published, to come across groups like these and meet people that are actually so passionate about books, it's just been lovely to just kind of know that I'm not the only person that feels that way about books. So thank you so much for having me. Any other questions, just stick them up on the page and I will get around to answering them. Mookie says, where's my ARC copy of The Surrogate? It's not quite ready yet for ARCs. It won't be too long. Jenny just started reading The Sister. Thank you. Oh, and you're writing as well. Well, good luck. Good luck with that. And check out the Women's Mentoring Project online. Get yourself a mentor. It really makes the world of difference. So thank you, Wendy, for organising this. Lauren, thanks for doing this. Your books sound really good. Are they on Amazon Kindle? Yeah, they're on Amazon Kindle, or they're on there as paperbacks or audio downloads. Jenny has a mourning period as well after a good book. I'm really pleased, because I always thought there was something a bit strange about me doing that. So that's really good. Kath, I'm glad you enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you everyone. It's been great, and I hope to come back some stage soon. So all have a good evening, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.